On the day of our high school graduation, Eric's uniform was covered in signatures from classmates scrambling to leave their mark. Just as we were about to part ways, he grabbed my hand and handed me a pen running out of ink. I leaned over and wrote my name in a small corner of his sleeve. Gripping the pen, I forced a smile and said, "Good luck, future superstar." But he stared at me without blinking, his face expressionless. "Good luck for what?" he said. "Good luck never seeing you again?" My smile froze. And with it, I drowned the last bit of hope I had. 8 years later, I saw him on television. He really had become a red-hot star. A variety show was filming at his home. By chance, they opened his wardrobe and discovered that same uniform, still covered in names. The host picked up the sleeve, right where my name was, and asked with a chuckle, "What does this mean to you, Eric?" On the screen, Eric lowered his gaze. He said only one word, light. Before I saw that episode on TV, I was already the center of attention. Because of me, yes, but more so because of my fiancé, John Forrest, and his childhood friend, Sarah Park. The Forrest family was extremely wealthy. Sarah's father had once been their chauffeur, which meant she and John had grown up together. Now, Sarah was drunk, stumbling down the street late at night, completely out of control. This was supposed to be a night with the boys. "What the hell are you doing bringing another woman?" Her cheeks flushed red, and she staggered in all directions. John moved to help her, but Sarah shoved him away, crying and yelling, "John, I changed my college plans for you. How could you throw me away like this?" Her voice was loud, drawing stares from passers-by. People stopped and pointed. Some of John's friends tried to calm Sarah down, others pulled John aside. Along the way, they shot me strange glances, their tone laced with judgment. "Sarah gave up so much for you. You can't treat her like this." John's face didn't look good. In his eyes, there was pity when he looked at Sarah. In the end, he let out a sigh and patted my head gently. "Wait here for me, okay? I'll take Sarah home first, then come back and watch the movie with you." I pressed my lips together and nodded obediently. Satisfied, John smiled. "Good girl. Wait for me." The moment he turned around, Sarah fell right into his arms, sobbing and clinging to him. I watched as John gently patted her back and murmured to her in a voice as tender as if coaxing a child. Suddenly, it felt like some invisible barrier had dropped from the sky, separating me from the two of them. I took a step back. My knuckles were white from clenching my fists. But John didn't see. He carried Sarah into his luxury sports car and sped off. As the crowd dispersed, I was left standing there, still. I reached into my bag and pulled out 2 movie tickets. The film was called Mad Child. The lead actor was Eric. The movie had gone viral, and John said he wanted to watch it. When I saw who the lead was, I hesitated, but eventually agreed. After all, the boy from our past had achieved his dream. As a former classmate, I owed him at least 1 ticket. There was still half an hour until showtime. I walked into a nearby restaurant and ordered a hot cup of corn juice. Business was slow. As I sat sipping my drink, my unfocused eyes landed on the TV mounted on the wall. And there, on the screen, was a face both familiar and unfamiliar. Eric. The grown-up Eric. The Eric who had finally made it. And the Eric who had changed. He was smiling softly at the camera. He looked mature, captivating. So obediently well-behaved it nearly drove me mad. "Wow, is that your high school uniform?" The host sounded amazed. "Brother Eric sure took good care of it." It was a home interview segment from a variety show. Standing in front of an open wardrobe, the host beamed as they held the microphone and teased smoothly, "Out of all these signatures, is there anyone you cared about the most?" Most celebrities would deflect questions like this. Everyone knew how to dodge ambiguity in the entertainment industry. But Eric's answer was short and direct, "Yes." The host froze in surprise. "Oh really? Wait, is this going to be like Roman Holiday?" In the final scene of Roman Holiday, the princess insists on shaking hands with every journalist. Just to have an excuse to hold the hand of the male lead, Joe. To shake your hand, I shook everyone else's. My mind instinctively flashed to my own name on his sleeve, then immediately told myself I was overthinking it. But on screen, Eric continued calmly, "Yes." To keep that one person's name on the uniform, he let everyone else sign it too. The host, now clearly excited, pressed on, "Wow. Then what does her name mean to you?" This time, Eric didn't answer right away. He just looked into the camera and fell silent. And for some reason, my heart started pounding. That silence, it was suffocating. My whole chest felt tight with panic. I watched as Eric slowly lowered his eyes, and opened his mouth to speak. Just then, my phone buzzed violently in my pocket, and the restaurant door flew open. "Sis-in-law. Sis-in-law, it's bad." Chaos erupted in the quiet restaurant. I didn't get to hear what Eric said. I didn't get to see how that moment ended. Because both the call and the people bursting in brought me the same, urgent news. John, had been in a car accident. On the way to take Sarah home, John had collided with another car. The car was mostly fine. So was he. Except, his head had slammed into the window during the impact. He passed out. And when he woke up, he had lost his memory. He forgot most people. He forgot Sarah. He couldn't even remember much of his own personality. The only one he remembered was me. It was the kind of plot you'd only see in soap operas. I sat by his hospital bed, frozen for a long, long time. And I couldn't help but wonder, was this all just another one of John's games? Was he acting? But John held onto my hand tightly, like a poor, rain-soaked stray dog with nowhere to go. Don't go, please, don't go. Seeing this, Sarah couldn't hold back any longer. She suddenly yanked me away, nearly screaming, John. I'm your childhood sweetheart. I'm the most important woman in your life. You promised to take care of me forever, how can you break your word? But John looked at her, his eyes full of unfamiliarity and indifference. You're loud. He frowned, clearly annoyed. Do I know you? What most important woman? Are you sick or something? Sarah staggered back, her eyes wide in disbelief. You just insulted me. Then she turned to me, grabbing my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. Stop pretending to be all sweet and innocent. You must be feeling really smug right now. Pretending to be sweet? That word hit me strangely. I gasped from the pain. Hiss. Sarah's eyes were red, her voice bitter and venomous. I'm telling you, John's doctor said he'll regain his memory soon. When that day comes, I'll make sure he sees you for what you really are, you shameless, gold-digging bitch. With that, she stormed out, slamming the door behind her. With her. John withdrew his gaze from the door and looked at me, a mixture of guilt and anxiety on his face. Did I do something to betray you before? I was stunned for a moment, my hand still gripping my arm, my gaze falling. Betrayal? There was no concrete betrayal. I pressed my lips together and shook my head. It was just that his love wavered. Sarah and John had grown up together. She was the little sister he couldn't let go of, the shadow always trailing behind him. More than friends, not quite lovers. That vague, ambiguous relationship, unless something drastic happened, only amnesia could ever break it cleanly. My silence must have seemed too cold. John grew increasingly desperate. Let's get married. I looked up in shock. He reached toward me with all his strength, like a drowning man clutching at the last stalk of grass, completely ignoring the bright red blood seeping from the foreneedle on his hand. Baby, let's get married. Right now. Then we'll have lots and lots of children, never be apart. I hadn't expected him to say that. And I hadn't expected him to be so urgent. I stared at him, lying in that hospital bed. Marriage. Union. Children. And then, never separated again. I saw the moisture in his eyes. But I couldn't see the depth of his love. It felt like someone was about to make a huge mistake, then suddenly corrected it. Flawlessly. So, was I supposed to forgive him? The unused movie tickets in my pocket suddenly burned like fire. They scorched a voice into my heart, screaming, isn't this what you've been holding out for? Isn't this what you've always wanted? To marry John. To become the wealthy wife under his protection. To finally have a solid, stable harbor in life. Was Sarah wrong about me? You fake, well-behaved little gold digger. Standing in front of our shabby, run-down apartment building, I received a message from John. He said he'd prepared a little surprise for me tonight, and told me to look forward to it. At the end, he even attached a little bear emoji with a heart above its head. Clumsy but eager affection. His amnesia, it seemed real. He only remembered me. Remembered meeting me, dating me, falling in love with me. He remembered every sweet detail of our time together. And completely forgot his entire childhood with Sarah. Sarah, of course, refused to give up. She kept bringing childhood photos and old friends into the hospital room, hoping something might spark his memory. But John only gave them a cursory glance, then coldly threw them and everyone else out. I sat quietly by the bed, peeling an apple for him. After holding back for a while, I finally couldn't resist asking, don't you want to remember your past? John snatched the knife and the apple from my hands, tossing them into the trash can. Baby, that's what the nurses are for. Don't cut your hand. He wrapped his arms around me and buried his face in my waist, inhaling deeply. His voice was muffled as it came from where he pressed into me. And what's the point of remembering? Growing up is just the process of letting go, isn't it? John's hugs had never been comfortable. They always felt like they were going to crush my bones. I shifted a little but couldn't break free. What he said made sense, yet still left me uneasy. Maybe it was the amnesia talking. But what if, one day, he remembered everything about Sarah? A cold drop of water hit my forehead, yanking me out of my thoughts. I looked up. It wasn't rain. Someone upstairs had just hung out their wet laundry. Drip, drip, drip. It was soaking the thick quilt I'd left out to dry for the winter. I sniffled and quickly ran upstairs. Before I even reached the 5th floor, I could already hear Mom shouting at the neighbors above for being inconsiderate. They shouted right back. The insults exchanged were vile and crude. When I reached her and helped gather the quilt, Mom's sallow face still bore the fury of the fight she hadn't finished venting. "Oh, my sweet girl's back." The moment she saw me, her face softened, and she called me by my childhood nickname. My heart warmed. I was just about to smile and respond when she spoke again. "So, how did it go with John? Did he say when he's going to marry you?" And just like that, my warm heart turned cold again. Upstairs, the neighbors overheard her and immediately shouted down, "Dream on, lady. Trash from this dump wants to marry into a rich family? Pa!" Instantly, my mom exploded like a firecracker. She rolled up her sleeves, ready to charge upstairs. I quickly held her back, blurting out the question before I could stop myself. "Mom, do I really have to marry John?" At those words, her fury vanished. Her face turned pale with panic. "Sweetheart, don't scare me like that. Did you two fight? John's such a good man, he's your only chance at a good life." I forced a smile. "Mom, I have a job too. I can live just fine." I took a deep breath. My heart thudded in my chest. "Mom, have you heard of that movie that's really popular right now? Mad Child? The original novel it's based on was written by me." But Mom wasn't listening. She stared at me, pleading like she always did. "Sweetheart, listen to your mother. Don't be rebellious like when you were a kid. Just lower your head. Make peace with John, alright? That's how life works in every family." That look again. That desperate, pleading look. My smile stiffened. And whatever hope I had left, sank. And Mom just kept going. "When you get older, it'll be too late to get married and have kids. All I want is to see you married, that's my one goal in life. Otherwise, I'll never feel at ease." The words I'd heard 1,000 times poured into my ears. My eyes drifted away, wandering toward the hallway window. It was raining. For real this time. "Sweetheart, you have to marry into a good family, okay? Do it for Mom's pride, got it?" The rain wasn't heavy, just a fine drizzle falling steadily. But it soaked deep into the old, crumbling apartment building that had trapped me for half my life. In the end, I still offered a gentle smile. "I understand, Mom." "That's good. Oh dear, it's raining now. It'll be chilly tonight. Hold on, sweetheart, Mom will grab you a jacket." "Okay. That's just how Mom is. Always pushing you out the door. But terrified you'll catch a cold once you're gone." Mom, it wasn't until that evening that I found out what John's little surprise was. And honestly, it felt more like a shock than a surprise. "This is my fiancé," he said with a proud smile, holding my hand. "And this is brother Eric. Eric, you know him, baby." Across the table, sat the man I never expected to face again. A reflexive denial shot up my throat, but I forced it back down. "No, John didn't know. The Eric he said I knew was the celebrity on screen. Not the boy from 8 years ago. The boy whose hand I once held, standing on a rooftop, counting to 3, ready to jump. Just 10 minutes earlier, while riding in John's car, I'd seen the trending headline at the top of social media, 'What does her name mean to you?' And Eric's reply, the one I hadn't been able to hear in the restaurant, was now written out clearly, Light. Eric's Light. That couldn't possibly be me. I was the hand that dragged him into the mud. The shame and nightmare he fought so hard to erase. The private dining room in the hotel was filled with laughter and clinking glasses. The atmosphere was fairly pleasant. John's logic was simple. Since we hadn't gotten to see the movie together, why not invite the lead actor to dinner? So he personally sponsored the variety show Eric was filming, The Unusual Elites. And with enough money, getting the whole production team to join us for a meal wasn't hard at all. "Don't be nervous, baby. Just pretend it's a regular dinner with friends." Mistaking my stiffness for fangirl excitement, John patted my head and gently reassured me. But regular was exactly what made this terrifying. I lowered my head. I couldn't even force a smile. Did Eric recognize me? Because Mad Child had exploded in popularity, Eric's backstory was soon dug up by curious fans. An ordinary family. Formal acting education. No connections. No backers. No wealthy sponsors or lucky breaks. He had started from scratch, doing theater, taking on background roles and body double work to survive. He'd broken almost every bone in his body, and nearly had his face disfigured in a stage accident. Everyone who had worked with him praised him as an actor with incredible conviction. One co-star had described him as someone who looked like he was chasing light. Since his debut, Eric had never once been caught in a scandal. Paparazzi even called him the man who starved the gossip columns. To this day, no one knew what, or who, that light he chased really was. While I was still lost in thought, Eric stood and walked toward me. He wore a black t-shirt, his sharp nose and thin lips catching the glint of the chandelier above. His obsidian eyes locked on mine. Miss Kent. His Adam's apple bobbed subtly as he spoke, and his eyes, lowered slightly, seemed to carry a hint of a smile. My heart skipped a beat. And suddenly, I remembered. John had never introduced me by my last name. Nice to meet you, Eric said calmly. Just a small moment. No one noticed. Not even Eric himself seemed to look at me again after that. Maybe he had recognized me, but chose not to acknowledge it. And honestly, who could blame him? A man who had poured blood, sweat, and tears into escaping the mud. Why would he ever look back at it? Why would I? Even trying to recall the past felt foreign, as if my brain had deliberately tucked it away in some forgotten drawer. And by the time I reached for it again, it had already rotted away, eaten by time. Only one sentence remained burned clearly in my memory. 8 years ago, Eric had looked at me, expressionless, and asked, "Good luck for what? Good luck never seeing you again?" But the cruel truth was, 8 years later, he still saw me again. I quietly lowered my head and ate what John had placed in my bowl, trying not to draw attention. After all this time, I knew John well. His possessiveness ran deep. He liked bringing me to parties like this. He liked showing me off to friends and colleagues. But he didn't like me chatting with strangers or standing out in any way. John always preferred me quiet, beautiful, obedient, like a porcelain doll. My feelings, my thoughts, they never really mattered. Thankfully, with Eric, the hottest star of the moment, at the table, no one paid attention to me. Chairman Forrest is the best. So generous, Chairman, I toast to you. Someone across the table stood up to raise a glass to John. I remembered what the doctor said and instinctively looked at him. John met my gaze. His hand paused midair, then slowly put the glass back down. Immediately, laughter erupted around the room. Oh, didn't expect Chairman Forrest to be a whipped husband. The man who'd raised the glass didn't know where to put his face. He forced a joke to save himself. Come on, man. Afraid of your wife before you're even married? Chairman Forrest, that's no way to live. He was clearly targeting me. Not knowing how to respond, I gave an awkward smile. But I noticed Eric, sitting next to him, frowning. His jaw tightened, sharp angles starting to show. John, however, merely curved his lips into a polite smile and replied, I have to drive later. Can't drink. In the past, unless it was Sarah, John would never tolerate someone crossing the line like that in front of him. But ever since the accident and the memory loss, his temper had softened. And since the car crash and amnesia weren't exactly things the Forrest family wanted going public, they tried to keep it all under wraps. Still, that man seemed a little too drunk, and insisted on making John drink. Oh come on. Just one shot. Or don't even go home tonight, get a room right here at the hotel. His slimy eyes slid toward me. You've got a girlfriend, why waste the room, ah? A sudden splash cut through the laughter. The entire room went silent. Everyone turned toward the sound. It was Eric. He had grabbed the man's glass and splashed the liquor straight into his face. The clear alcohol streamed down his flushed cheeks, drop by drop, bone-chillingly cold to watch. Feeling more sober now? Eric set down the empty glass without a trace of bravado. No joking oops, my hand slipped. No smile. He simply stared at the man with sharp, black and white eyes. Something about it made people think of a wolf hunting in the night. For a moment, the managers and directors seated nearby were stunned. As if they were seeing Eric for the very first time. I froze too. A long-lost but achingly familiar feeling surged up in my chest, quiet and overwhelming. Like the pressure in the air before a thunderstorm. The man stayed frozen for a while before finally remembering to get angry. You, Eric. You, don't think you're hot shit just 'cause you filmed one stupid movie. That mad child wouldn't even exist without my script. Alright, everyone's drunk. Just fooling around. That's all. Sensing the tension rising, Eric's manager quickly jumped in to smooth things over. Our Eric is usually such a quiet and polite boy. Look, he's clearly wasted tonight, ha. The director didn't want the dinner ruined either. He signaled the waitstaff to escort the man out to wash his face, then tried to steer the conversation elsewhere. The room gradually returned to its noisy hum, though whispers flitted about the table. Damn, that was intense. Brother Eric usually has such a good temper. Why'd he snap at editor Ryan like that? You don't know? Henry Ryan's just a ghost editor. They actually had a fight during filming. Eric almost punched him out, that was really scary. What? Seriously? What was it about? Well, Eric accused Ryan of plagiarism. Said there's no way he wrote Mad Child, and kept pressing him to reveal who the real author was. Just for that? Come on, it's an open secret in the industry that Ryan hires ghostwriters. At the table, I kept my head down. My hands, resting on my knees, slowly curled into fists. Nails digging sharply into skin. So, it was him. My mad child had been stolen, by that man. The summer after the college entrance exams, I started working part-time to save up tuition money. At the same time, I began posting my first novel on a small online platform. Unknown. Unpopular. No readers. No income. It was simply a way to vent. Then one day, an editor from the site messaged me. He said he liked my story and wanted to offer me a contract. Back then, I was too inexperienced. It was the first time someone had ever validated me like that. The joy was dizzying. I barely skimmed the thick contract he mailed over. Just signed my name and sent it back in a rush of excitement. 3 months later, he messaged again. Said I had failed to meet the agreement and would now face a massive penalty lawsuit. Panicked, I pulled out the contract and read it line by line. Sure enough, hidden in the dense fine print for Party B were strict requirements. Finish the novel within 3 months. Reach over 1 million views. If I failed to meet the terms, I would owe 5 times the original fee in compensation. There it was, black ink on white paper. Naive as I was, I didn't even know if it was legally enforceable. I was just terrified. The editor softened his tone. Said he'd be willing to buy out the rights for $50,000 and wouldn't pursue damages. From that moment on, Mad Child would have nothing to do with me. I told myself it was fine. Like falling face first into the dirt and eating grass. At least it filled my stomach. I transferred the entire $50,000 to my mother, then entered university alone. That's where I met John. He chased me earnestly, and I eventually agreed to date him. The 4 years that followed were relatively happy. As for Mad Child, it remained buried in my heart like a thorn. I thought it would never see the light of day again. But this year, it was adapted into a film. And together with Eric, it exploded. The story I never got to finish. The boy I never got to reach the end with. They fulfilled each other. And now the world saw them both. To be honest, it made me want to cry from happiness. But when Sarah got drunk that night and ruined my movie date with John, all I felt was relief. I never did find out how Mad Child was concluded. But I knew. It was never going to be my ending. I once had 2 great prides I wanted to share with the world. But I also knew, whether it was the boy, or the story, I no longer had the right. I sat there, zoning out, not even aware of what the others were talking about at the table. Then someone grabbed my hand. Startled, I looked up. Only to meet John's profile, turned toward something with mild interest. Baby, he said, wanna give it a try? What? I looked around, confused. Everyone at the table was staring at me. Everyone, except Eric. Realizing I had spaced out, John turned to me and patiently repeated, that guest over there, her name's Miss Prentice. She's next week's special feature. Supposedly an amazing dreamweaver. Wanna try it, baby? I followed his gesture and finally noticed the woman sitting at the far end of the table. She looked young, elegant. Dressed in a deep green cheapao, her figure graceful, her features refined. But for some reason, she had almost no presence. Like a pearl cloaked in silk, its shine deliberately dimmed. What a coincidence, John added casually. She has the same last name as you, Kent. As our eyes met, I gave her a somewhat awkward smile. She didn't return it. Her expression remained cold and unreadable. Eric was currently starring in a show called The Hidden Elites, and apparently, dreamweavers were exactly that, hidden. Dreamweavers, also known as lucid guides or hypnotherapists, were said to help people fall asleep quickly. Then lead them into specific dreamscapes, their subconscious or buried memories. At least, that was the director's scientific explanation. But the moment Miss Prentice opened her mouth, it all felt far more mystical. She sat upright, studied John from head to toe, then asked calmly, without any unnecessary emotion, what do you want to try? Dream entry, dream creation, or shared dreaming? Shared dreaming? John blinked. You can let 2 people enter the same dream? Miss Prentice nodded slightly. I was stunned. And deeply skeptical. If this were ancient times, she'd probably be accused of witchcraft. But John only grew more excited. And didn't even ask for my opinion. Let's try shared dreaming, he said. Me and my fiancé. Just then, Henry, still damp from having his face washed, returned to the room. He scoffed loudly, what dreamweaver? What a load of crap. And you all buy into this gimmick? Earlier, Henry's attempts to force John to drink had already soured the mood. Now that Eric had poured a drink on him, John tolerated it just to keep the peace. Henry interrupted again, and John's face darkened completely. Editor Ryan, he said coldly, if you can't handle the dinner I invited you to, then get out. Hearing John speak like that, Henry didn't dare push further. He forced a laugh. Come on, Chairman Forrest, I didn't mean anything by it. You two are a couple, right? Surely you have some kind of mind connection by now. As he spoke, he glanced at me with thinly veiled contempt. Besides, if you two end up not sharing the same dream, doesn't that just mean you're not meant to be? What if you agreed on the story beforehand, or just faked it to match afterward? Wouldn't that be pointless? At those words, John fell silent. It was Miss Prentice who spoke instead. Then what do you suggest? Henry grinned, flashing a smile full of malice. I heard Chairman Forrest's fiancée is a big fan of Eric, isn't she? Why not have Miss Kent and our superstar try the dream sharing instead? That summer had been too hot. Too full of life. Wet grass had sprouted from dry soil, growing wild and unrestrained, taking root all across the old city. I stood on the rooftop of a 7-story building. Above me, thick, suffocating clouds. Below, wet grass, stubborn and alive. And in my hand, another hand. One that trembled slightly in my grip. I'll count to 3, I said cheerfully, like we were just doing a long jump in gym class. At 3, we jumped together. 1, 2, 3. On 3, I bent my knees, closed my eyes, and jumped. But my center of gravity was yanked backward. The hand in mine pulling me hard onto the rooftop's concrete floor. Ow! I cried, clutching the back of my head. That hurts. I turned my head. And there he was. A boy with a pale face, tightly pressed lips, and eyes red with tears. I stared at him. And in that moment, I forgot the pain. I simply gripped his hand tighter. Scared to jump? He didn't say a word. Just shook his head forcefully, and 2 fat tears rolled down his cheeks. I grinned with triumph. Then don't jump. Live, okay? Stop thinking about dying or hurting yourself. He nodded again. Then, in a hoarse voice, forced out a single line, You, don't die either. I blinked, surprised. Then burst out laughing, sprawling out on the cold concrete like a starfish. I don't want to die. I said. Death takes everything but life. And life can leave behind everything but death. So I want to live. I want to grow up. I want to become someone amazing. Climb out of this mud pit and live free. How about that? Exciting, right? I turned to him with a grin. But just as my head tilted, I felt a shadow fall over me. The boy leaned over, both arms braced beside my head. His dark eyes followed the movement of my lips. My heart slammed wildly in my chest. I couldn't breathe. But he didn't finish his sentence. He simply lowered his head. And gently kissed my forehead. A kiss full of teenage gentleness, shyness, and reverence. The kiss lingered, between my brows, down the bridge of my nose. And finally stopped right above my lips. So close. Just the barest distance away. Enough to steal the air from my lungs. I shut my eyes, nervous. But he pushed himself up and sat beside me instead. The heavy clouds blocked out the sun. The air was so thick it felt impossible to breathe. The whole world faded, leaving behind just one beam of light. Shining only on the space between me and him. He looked at me and smiled. I really look forward to it. I opened my eyes. What did you dream? The dark sky was gone. Above me now hung a blinding chandelier. Its cruel light exposing everything beneath it. Coward, I muttered. John's memory was improving. Just as Sarah had said, the treatments were working. He no longer kicked her out of the hospital room. Instead, he'd listen, albeit impatiently, to her ramble on for a few more minutes. Sarah, too, had learned her lesson. She no longer threw tantrums or cried dramatically. Now, she played the pitiful victim. John, I changed my college major for you, remember? Wasted over 10 points to apply for something I'm not even good at. You promised me, when we were little, you'd marry me, take care of me for the rest of my life. You can't go back on your word. John's family had their own private theater, but I preferred watching movies at the mall. There's something comforting about being surrounded by strangers in quiet agreement. Because of Mad Child's insane popularity, the film's theatrical run was extended. John bought us 2 more tickets. I came downstairs under Mom's urging. Just as I reached John's car, parked outside, I heard Sarah's voice. From afar, I saw John leaning against the car door. His head hung low, his eyes cast down, his expression unreadable. Sarah stood close, clutching the sleeve of his jacket, crying as if her world was ending. My steps began to slow. I looked up. And there, leaning over the apartment's metal railing, was my mother. She had been smiling just a moment ago. Now, that smile froze. Panic and dread crept across her sallow face. She looked like a paper doll, so thin and fragile, she might tear at a touch. Our eyes met. She shook her head frantically, pleading with me in silence. Don't go down there. Don't expose anything. Just pretend you didn't see. Pretend you didn't know. Just endure it. Like she did, all those years, with my father. In the end, I stopped walking. Not just because of Mom's desperate gaze. But also because I saw someone else. Miss Prentice. I barely got the name out before she grabbed my wrist and whisked me toward her car. The rapid clicks of her heels echoed down the pavement, loud enough to catch John's attention. He turned. Saw me. A flash of panic crossed his face. He instinctively reached out to push Sarah away. Baby? But by then, I was already in the passenger seat. Miss Prentice had even buckled me in. John rushed a few steps after us, but she floored the gas, leaving him behind in a cloud of exhaust. I glanced into the rearview mirror. John ran back to his car in a panic. Sarah tried to follow him, but she was too slow. I turned to the driver's seat. Oddly, I wasn't afraid at all. Not of this strange, sudden kidnapping. After a beat of silence, I asked, Miss Prentice, where are you taking me? She slammed her foot down again, the steering wheel screeching. To dream. I blinked. Then remembered. She was a dreamweaver. It made perfect sense. That night, back at the banquet, I had overheard someone mention that Miss Prentice's services were prohibitively expensive. At my salary, I couldn't even afford a single basic dream session, not even in a few months. I hesitated, uneasy. Miss Prentice, I don't think I can afford it. She turned slightly, her profile cold, and waved dismissively. I don't need money. I need virtue. Huh? What, you've never heard of virtue? As in doing good deeds. That's what I'm short on. Got it. I blinked, stunned, then suddenly burst out laughing. Miss Prentice glanced at me, still expressionless. Finally, a real laugh. You've been fake smiling so much it's made my cheeks sore. Embarrassed, I mumbled, sorry. Sorry for what? You're so bottled up it makes people want to smack you. You weren't always like this, were you? I went silent. Miss Prentice suddenly hit the brakes hard, pulling the car into a hidden roadside spot. Finally got rid of those nuisances. She turned to me, eyes gleaming. If you can't remember who you used to be, let me help you remember. I remembered. I used to be a problem child. The kind of kid who could get her mom called to school 8 times in 7 days to apologize to the teachers. Because I would take the textbooks and homework that others had smeared or torn up on purpose, march straight to the culprit, and smash them in her face. Then snatch her books and tear them all to shreds. Because once, when I beat up a boy who spread rumors about me and the homeroom teacher demanded I apologize. I stood on the podium, back straight, head held high, and said loudly, I did nothing wrong. You should all learn from me. Because I once reached barehanded into Eric's desk, pulled out a dead rat, found the one who'd put it there, pried his mouth open, and shoved my fist inside. Right. Eric. Back then, Eric and I were both frequent victims of bullying. But he had it worse. He was too physically and emotionally fragile to fight back. So I fought for him. And at the time, Eric had this wild, thick mane of hair that covered most of his face. He looked like one of those emo kids from early 2000s punk bands. Strangely enough, when he got beat up, he never made a sound. But if someone tried to cut even one strand of his hair, he would lose his mind. Didn't matter if it was a teacher or a bully. Eric would go completely feral, screaming, threatening to kill himself. No one dared touch him. So even after 2 years of high school, I had never really seen his full face. Just like now. I was being dragged by him through a narrow alley, splattered with mud. Rain soaked his long black hair, clinging to his skin, covering every inch of his face. I ran behind him, bewildered, glancing down at my mud-stained school uniform. Wait, this is a lucid dream? I remembered. Right before I closed my eyes, I had still been in Miss Prentice's car, reclined in the passenger seat. Lucid dreaming means knowing you're dreaming. Knowing everything around you is illusion. Unlike the last time, when I was fully immersed in a fabricated identity and memory. But this time, which memory was this dream drawing from? The sky was so dark. The rain so heavy. The alley was narrow, bricks uneven and slick with filth. My feet throbbed, like they were soaked and starting to rot. But, this is a dream, right? So why does it hurt so much? Why does it feel this real? I was distracted. And in that moment of distraction, my foot caught on a loose brick. I tripped. Chrysa. I hit the ground hard, just as a boy's voice rang out. I blinked. For a moment, I didn't even register it. Then it clicked. Eric had called my name. Chrysa. Chrysa Kent. That was my name. And suddenly I remembered. The reason I was bullied in high school had started with this name. On the first day of school, the class monitor laughed out loud when he read it off the roster. Later, a group of boys gave me a nickname. Chrysa. They circled me, making faces, mock-singing the words, chrysanthemum withers, in shrill, taunting tones. I didn't hold back. I went up and punched the monitor hard enough to dislocate his jaw. That same day, my mother got called to school. Now, I sat up in the muddy alley, my knees burning. Eric rushed over, but I shoved him away. I can't run anymore. I need to rest. You go first. Panting heavily, I thought, I'm 26 years old. There's no way I can outrun a teenage boy even in a dream. But then, Eric suddenly dropped to his knees and clung to me. I'm not leaving. My forehead leaned against his chest, both our chests heaving with breath, hearts pounding. Don't be scared. I won't leave. I'll protect you this time. Let me protect you, let me protect you. He buried his face into the crook of my neck, his voice muttering the same line over and over, drenched by the downpour. Eric was shaking. He was scared. A deep, primal dread tightened around my chest, urging me to remember what came next. But before memory could return, someone came first. A man. Dressed in rags. Eyes wild, face deranged. And when he saw my exposed legs, his mouth began to water, like a starving wolf spotting prey. Hey, little girl, come sleep with Uncle, sleep. He cackled as he lunged forward. Eric shoved me aside and charged at him, slamming his head full force into the man's stomach. The man howled, then glared viciously. His fist smashed into Eric's face. Eric. I screamed. I heard the sound of his nose breaking. But Eric didn't cry out. He staggered, then charged again. This time, grabbing a brick from the ground, he slammed it into the man's temple. Crack. The man trembled, then collapsed like a falling mountain. I stared, wide-eyed, mind blank. Rain mixed with my tears. Everything blurred. Eric stood, hunched and panting. Blood soaked his chin and chest. He turned to look at me. His black eyes burned, hot, blinding, unstoppable. Like his entire soul was on fire. I won. He grinned, a red, bloody grin. I can finally protect. But in the next second, the man, who'd seemed unconscious, sprang up. A broken beer bottle clutched in his hand. And he lunged straight at Eric. No, don't let me see this again. Wake up, wake me up, please. I opened my eyes. The rain had stopped. But the world felt even darker. I hadn't returned to Miss Prentice's car. I wasn't awake. But I remembered now. It had been the second semester of junior year. Eric and I had run away from home. To be precise, I had planned to run away. Eric insisted on coming with me. The reason? I couldn't take the abuse anymore. My father, when he wasn't drunk, was a man. But once alcohol touched his lips, he became a monster. Our family had always been like grasshoppers tied to the same string, biting each other, dragging each other down. So I made up my mind. I would leave. For good. I wanted freedom. I wanted to see the world. I didn't want to be tied to one place anymore. Eric came from a broken home. His mother doted on her second child, and his stepfather was distant, but at least, no one abused him. Still, he insisted on running away with me. We packed water, dry food, spare change, and even a map and compass. But what we didn't pack was any preparation for the darkness of the world. On the third night after we left home, I was targeted by a mentally unstable homeless man. To protect me, Eric was stabbed 5 or 6 times with a shattered beer bottle. It wasn't until my blood-curdling screams brought a nearby night shift worker that the lunatic was finally scared off. Thank God the jagged bottle wasn't sharp enough to be fatal, and the wounds, though deep, missed any critical areas. Eric spent 4 months in the hospital before he was barely able to return to school. And that's when I truly understood. I couldn't protect Eric. And Eric couldn't protect me either. We were both too naive, too immature, too full of ourselves. Thinking we could change the world. Thinking we could fight fate. But the truth was, the fate we were trying to escape had already been one of the kindest possible. Because of how severe the incident was, our runaway story made the news. The truth about my father's domestic abuse also came to light. The police came to investigate. They detained him. When he came back, I think he'd been scared straight. He didn't hit us anymore. He barely drank. During that time, my mom was the happiest she had ever been. Her husband had finally stopped hitting her, and life became bearable. But just then, my father got into a car accident. After a month of pain and struggling in the hospital, he passed away. At the funeral, I didn't shed a single tear. In fact, I couldn't help but laugh. And that was the first time. My mother slapped me. A loud, ringing slap. She cried as she hit me, saying it was all because I wasn't obedient enough. That I was always causing trouble at school, my grades were poor. And that's why things turned out the way they did. She said if I'd just been a little more obedient, a little more tolerant, the school wouldn't have punished me. The classmates wouldn't have bullied me in revenge. And my father wouldn't have turned into an alcoholic or hit us. She asked how I could have dared to run away from home. Did I ever think about her? Did I ever consider how she felt? How worried she was? How heartbroken? She said from the day I left, she hadn't slept a wink. Her hair had fallen out in clumps. Her eyes cried blood. To find me, she went door to door, asking strangers. Wore her shoes until they broke, then walked barefoot, her feet covered in blisters. How much longer are you going to keep making Mom worry? I only have one daughter. You're my flesh and blood. Why can't you just be a good girl? She held me tightly in the middle of the funeral, crying until she collapsed. Not obedient. Everything was because I wasn't obedient. If I had just been a good kid, maybe Dad would have liked me more. Maybe he wouldn't have hit me, or Mom. If I'd just been a good student, tolerated the teasing and insults, maybe the bullying wouldn't have escalated so badly. If I'd just been a good girl, maybe the person I liked wouldn't have ended up in the hospital. Maybe his family wouldn't have resented me. They said it was because I fell in love too young. That Eric had turned into a problem student because of me. They forbade me from ever seeing him again. Yes. It was all because I wasn't obedient. Because I wasn't. So I had to be. I had to become a good daughter. A good girlfriend. A good wife. A good mother. If I just behaved, then the people I cared about, the people I loved, wouldn't get hurt anymore. Until then, staying away from me was the best thing for them. Krysa, how much longer are you going to ignore me? Someone grabbed my wrist. The sudden touch brought me back from the haze. It was Eric. He looked even thinner than before, his face paler. And the light in his dark eyes was gone. Only then did I realize. We were on the school's outdoor track. It was likely evening study time. The field was empty, swallowed by night. The breeze was cool. Stars dotted the sky. In the silence, I could hear insects softly chirping. Ever since I came back to school, you haven't said a single word to me. You don't look at me. Every time we cross paths, you avoid me. Even when we don't, you still find a way to stay far away. His voice trembled, the sadness nearly pleading. Krysa, what are you thinking? You don't have to feel guilty. Or ashamed. It was all my choice. Getting to protect you made me happy. You couldn't protect me at all. I suddenly yanked my hand away and shouted, don't you get it yet? You're useless. I wasn't feeling guilty. Or ashamed. I was just sick of how weak you were. Eric froze. The veins on the back of his hand bulged. You're lying. You're just trying to push me away. That's right. I am pushing you away. Get lost. All you ever do is drag me down. I don't want to see you again. Eric didn't speak. His fists clenched tight at his sides, lips nearly bleeding from the force of his bite. Not a chance. He stared at me, eyes red. If you won't look at me, then I'll become a star so bright, your eyes won't be able to look away. I fought back the tears, forcing a crooked smile. In your dreams. God, I hadn't grown at all. 8 years had passed. And even in my dreams, I still acted like a child. Using cruelty to hide vulnerability. Using hurtful words to run away from the truth. Saying the most reckless, self-destructive things. Eric and we really were two sides of the same coin. This video is an original work of the YouTube channel Romance Grove, and is published exclusively on this channel. Please don't re-upload or share it on other channels. After that day, I forced myself to shut out the world and focus only on studying. Slowly, my grades crawled up from the bottom of the class. Then, after the mock exams, I found out. Eric had changed too. He became quiet. Diligent. Obsessive about solving test after test. But there was one difference. On his college application, he wrote, in bold letters, Central Academy of Drama, Acting Department. When our classmates found out Eric wanted to be a celebrity, they burst out laughing. He became the school's running joke. Mocked, ridiculed, torn apart. Until one day, Eric walked into school with his emo hair completely shaved off. And the entire room went silent. Eventually, Eric started to gain popularity. No one dared question his dreams anymore. Even younger girls began sending him Valentine's chocolates. Confessing to him. Asking for autographs. But Eric. He turned them all down. Coldly. Indifferently. Me, included. Of course. That was what I deserved. I was the one who pushed him away. Said things that scarred his heart. He had every right to be angry. To never forgive me. But still. Deep down, I truly hoped he would reach his dream. Even if that dream had nothing to do with me. Even if it wasn't for me. I just hoped he could be happy. It felt like a lifetime had passed in this dream. But when I glanced at the time, I realized, I had only slept for 10 minutes. Finally waking from the dream, I noticed the car I was sitting in had already started speeding again. I couldn't help turning to Miss Prentice, who held a cigarette between her lips, but hadn't lit it. Miss Prentice, where are we going? The film set. The set? I blinked, confused, still half convinced I was dreaming. The set, for what? Miss Prentice exhaled, letting the unlit cigarette fall from her lips. Special delivery. Swapping the prince with a beggar. It wasn't until we arrived at the variety show studio that I finally understood what she meant. When I saw the female celebrity who she'd knocked out with a mere snap of her fingers, I panicked. Isn't this a little too much? You said she was the guest in the script, meant to do the dream sharing with Eric. If you replace her with me and it breaches contract. Cut the crap, Miss Prentice snapped. Dig out that old courage of yours, the same girl who once grabbed a dead rat with her bare hands. As she spoke, she shoved me toward the dream room the production crew had already prepared, casually shrugging. Besides, something this supernatural? Even if they record it, they won't air it. Fine. Before I had time to pity the poor director, Miss Prentice had already pinned me down onto the single bed. Miss Prentice. I couldn't help grabbing her sleeve. Why are you helping me so much? This time, she paused. A rare, soft smile touched her eyes. Because I took Eric's money. And because even out of sight, love continues to grow? The red string still quietly ties your fingers together. And matchmaking, she added, is the most virtuous deed of all. The boy curled up in his hospital bed, his gaze fixed on the window. His eyes followed a bird hopping from branch to branch. She loved birds. She was like one herself. When she smiled, it felt like she could take flight at any moment. He couldn't help but think about that kiss that almost happened. Nose to nose, in a world where only the two of them existed, breathing in each other's heartbeat. But he couldn't do it. Didn't dare. He had always been a coward. Just a bit of neglect at home, some bullying at school. And he'd already thought about ending his life. Maybe, he never truly wanted to die. Maybe, he just wanted a little more attention from her. But she had agreed to jump, just like that. So easily, so decisively. It had scared him. Not the idea of dying. But the idea of losing her. If you're scared to jump, then live. Don't keep thinking about dying or hurting yourself. He nodded urgently, then forced out a muffled sentence. You, don't die either. She froze for a second, then burst into laughter. She threw herself down on the cement floor, arms and legs splayed wide. I don't want to die, she said. Death takes nothing but life. But life lets you leave everything behind. So I'm going to live. I'll grow up into someone amazing. I'll escape this swamp and live freely. Isn't that worth looking forward to? More than the sun behind the clouds, more than anything. She was something to look forward to. That version of her. Warm, full of life, always saving him. How could he not fall for her? Unexplainable courage surged through him. He planted both hands beside her head, his gaze fixed on her lips. He liked her. A silent kind of like, stopped at the lips, buried in his bones, poisoned by self-doubt. That's why he couldn't say it. Would never say it. As long as they never spoke of it, there would be no ending. He liked watching her stand in the light, even if it meant he had to stay in the dark forever. I am really looking forward to it. I like you. I've always liked you. I want to stay by your side, until the day I'm strong enough to present that love to you, openly. Standing outside the hospital room, I'd been listening for a long time. Then, pressing my lips together, I slowly pushed open the door. The boy in the bed turned his face toward me. He looked at me quietly for a while. He didn't ask, "Who are you?" He didn't ask me to leave. It was as if, somewhere deep in his subconscious, everything that had to do with me was perfectly natural. And in that calm acceptance, the last barrier around my heart crumbled. Sorry. I guess I broke my promise. I meant to say it with a smile, but within a single breath, all the sourness welled up uncontrollably. The tears began to fall. One by one, then all at once. I sobbed, utterly wrecked. Like a newborn baby. I'm sorry. I didn't become someone amazing. I didn't live freely. I failed. I disappointed you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But the boy just sat there patiently, letting me cry. A long time passed before he finally spoke. Can you right now afford to spend an evening just the way you want? No homework, no tests. Just snacks you like, a movie or game you enjoy, and a good night's sleep afterward. I blinked. Then sniffled and nodded. Yeah. Can you right now choose the road you want to take next? I wiped my tears, blew my nose, and eventually nodded firmly. Yes. I once knew a great girl. Her name was beautiful, like a flower admired by all noble souls. Do you know what she'd say about you now? I hesitated, then slowly shook my head. He looked at me and smiled. She'd say, wow. You're amazing. The future version of me who turns into you, that's something worth looking forward to. On the day John fully recovered his memories, I broke up with him. John stayed quiet for a long time. He didn't seem surprised. As if the thing he feared had finally come to pass. I know I was wrong. He said only half the sentence, then stopped. Stubbornly, he cast his gaze somewhere away from me, sinking into silence again. Finally, he said coldly, fine. I wish you happiness. Then he turned and walked away. I watched as he wrapped his arm around Sarah in the distance, and truly wished him well. But the next night, I received over 100 drunk voice messages and paragraphs from John. I listened to each one. Read every single word. In the recordings, he was drunk and rambling. He cried incoherently. He said he was wrong. That he never should have been so boundaryless with Sarah. That he should have drawn the line and protected me. He said he shouldn't have been so controlling. He should have cared more about how I felt. He said he really did love me. But after losing me, that love became something he couldn't ignore. He couldn't live without me. He begged me to give him another chance. I was surprised. Who would have thought? His mind became clearest when he was drunk. It wasn't until I heard the voice message John sent me this morning. By then, he'd slept a few hours, some of the alcohol had worn off, but his voice still carried the edge of tears. He said I was special. That I always gave him companionship and energy. That I'd make a wonderful wife. That I was good, and obedient, and at the word obedient, I smiled, moved. Then I blocked John on everything. It wasn't until much later, when I thought of John again, that I heard what happened to him. He dated around, one girlfriend after another. But almost none lasted more than 2 months. Either John felt they still weren't enough like someone, or Sarah stepped in and stirred things up. Eventually, even John grew tired of her, the so-called childhood sweetheart. He started resenting her, thinking, she's just the driver's daughter, why is she acting like she runs his life? Finally, fed up, John snapped. All that crap about how much you gave up for me, changing your major just for me, that was your choice, not mine. And I said I'd take care of you for life? What, are you disabled? Got no hands or feet? That one sentence, said in front of a crowd, completely destroyed Sarah's image. With no more good sister halo, her privileges vanished. She hung on for a while out of pride, but in the end, gave up her dream of marrying into a rich family. As for John himself, his recent behavior had disappointed the Forrest family's eldest son so much, he was packed off to Germany for a never-ending cycle of grueling study. When I told my mother about the breakup, she looked as if the sky had collapsed. Panic and desperation flooded her face. She begged me to reconcile with John, even offered to plead with him for me. She kept repeating that a woman only has a home if she marries. That a woman must depend on a man to be truly settled. But I simply watched her in silence, waiting until her emotions finally calmed. Then I softly asked, Mom, do you still remember how your husband used to beat you, and me? You've been trapped your whole life, by father, by that so-called home. It drained you, bled you dry, left you bruised and broken. You say I'm your daughter, your own flesh and blood. Then how can you bear to see me become another version of you? I looked at my mother. Watched as tears suddenly spilled from her eyes. Tears even she hadn't expected. I reached out and gave her a big, tight hug. Mom, I'm going far away. But don't worry. I won't catch cold. And everywhere I go, we'll be home. Hey, didn't Mad Kid come out years ago? Wasn't the lead movie star Eric? Am I remembering wrong? You didn't see the news? The original author of Mad Kid, along with other victimized writers, sued that guy Henry and his pirated website. Damn. Did they win? The lawsuit lasted years. It was brutal. But they won, made Henry cough up everything he had. This is the new version. Personally readapted by the original author. Hell yeah. But I never got to see the old one. Which is better, old or new? I saw someone say, the old one was fake mad, truly obedient. The new one? Pretend obedient, truly mad. But instead of feeling uneasy, it left your chest warm. Like it makes you want to go farther, fly higher. Shoo, ads are over. Movie's starting. No more talking. As the chatter from the seats behind us faded, I glanced to the man sitting beside me, completely masked and hatted. He met my eyes, then hesitated mid-motion as he tried to secretly grab my left hand. He pulled back. But behind the mask, those dark eyes blinked innocently, almost pleadingly. Trying to act especially obedient. I couldn't help smiling. Mouthing a silent word at him, coward. Then, I felt my right hand being tightly grasped. Fingers interlaced. All right. No more talking. The movie's starting. And this time, it's our story. A brand new ending.